Alright, listen up, because what just happened at the 2026 World Cup final is the most humiliating public isolation of Drake's entire career, and nobody is telling you the real story. Drake pulled up to MetLife Stadium, in front of the biggest television audience on planet Earth, and the whole rap industry looked at him like he wasn't even there. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not spinning it. Watch this, because when you actually break down the seating chart of that stadium, when you look at who was next to who, when you look at who walked past Drake without so much as a nod, you'll understand why people online are now calling this the night Drake got frozen out of his own genre. And here's the part that's going to make you sit up: it wasn't Kendrick who did it. It wasn't Jay-Z who did it. It wasn't even the fans. Drake did it to himself, and the receipts from that stadium are so brutal that even his own camp can't spin their way out of it. Let me set the scene for the ones just catching up, because you need to feel the weight of this room. The FIFA World Cup final is the single biggest live event on Earth. Every billionaire, every A-list actor, every athlete, every rapper with a private jet was in that building. Jay-Z was there with Beyoncé. Rihanna was there with A$AP Rocky. Pharrell was there. Future was there. LeBron adjacent circles, tennis royalty, Tom Cruise, Timothée Chalamet, the president himself, all of them in the same square footage of one American stadium. And in the middle of that gravitational pull of every powerful person alive, Drake was standing in his own little corner with Chubbs, Sexy Red, SGA the basketball player, and, I kid you not, Mr. Beast. Let that image burn into your brain for a second. The most streamed rapper on the planet, the man who claimed the throne on Iceman, and his closest company in the biggest room of the year was a YouTuber who reviews chocolate bars. That is the entire story in one snapshot. Here's the thing though, Drake didn't just show up small. Drake showed up surrounded by silence. Because the people he spent an entire album attacking, they were all right there. Jay-Z, whom Drake dissed 4 separate times on Iceman, was 10 feet away laughing with Beyoncé and never once turned his head. A$AP Rocky, whom Drake antagonized on Family Matters and again on Iceman, walked past Drake's row without breaking stride. Rihanna, whose name Drake dragged into his own bars, didn't so much as glance in his direction. And Pharrell, the man Drake has been trading shots with for years, Pharrell was holding court with the whole industry orbiting around him. Everyone Drake ever swung at was in the room, and the message they collectively sent Drake was the most devastating message in the industry: nothing. Silence. Not a nod. Not a glare. Not a peace sign. Just complete, surgical, coordinated indifference. Now for the ones just catching up on the actual paper trail, Drake spent the last 2 years turning Iceman into a hit list. He fired shots at Kendrick. He fired shots at Jay-Z. He revived the Family Matters energy against A$AP Rocky. He put barbs in the wax at Pharrell, at Metro, at anybody who ever chose a side against him. Drake made an entire album that treated rap peers like target practice. And when you make an album like that, you don't get to walk into the World Cup final expecting the same room to embrace you. You made your bed. You made it in bar form. You pressed it to vinyl. You shipped it worldwide. And on Sunday night, that bed came for you in front of 1 billion viewers. But here's where the story flips into something even wilder, because the biggest bombshell wasn't who ignored Drake. The biggest bombshell was who was standing next to his enemies. Peep the footage, because when the cameras caught Pharrell's section, guess who was posted up right there, laughing with Pharrell, throwing gang signs, taking pictures like a lifelong friend? Future. Future. The same Future who is literally on Iceman right now. The same Future whose feature Drake just paid a bag for. The same Future who ran back to Atlanta with Drake on that track. That Future was standing shoulder to shoulder with Drake's biggest ops and never once crossed the room to say hello to the man who put him on the biggest album of the year. Let that sink in. Drake bought loyalty for a verse and got a public snub for it. And this is where Drake's whole strategy falls apart. See, everybody warned Drake. Everybody said the same thing when Iceman dropped with Future on it. you cannot trust a man who made a whole album with your enemy. You cannot bring a Switzerland rapper into your war and expect him to pick a flag. Future spent the last era making music with Metro, with the Kendrick camp, with the exact people Drake was firing shots at. Then Future dropped his own album and put Pharrell on a song called Alice. Now, keep in mind, at the exact same time, Drake was catching heat for a video of him drinking with a woman named Alice. Coincidence? Maybe. Coordinated? Maybe. But when a man of Drake's paranoia sees his own collaborator releasing a track named after the woman that got him dragged online, you tell me Drake wasn't fuming in that stadium. You tell me Drake wasn't watching Future laugh with Pharrell and quietly cooking a grudge. Here's what's crazy, Drake will never say a word about it. Not publicly. Not on wax. Not in a rant. Why? Because Drake needs Future the way an addict needs the dealer. Future is the last consistent hitmaker Drake has locked in. Every time Drake needs a top 10 single, Drake calls Future. Every time Drake needs a radio smash, Drake calls Future. Future is the human insurance policy on Drake's chart run, and Drake knows it. So even when Future publicly disrespects Drake by aligning with the ops, Drake bites his tongue and keeps the phone open. Compare that to how Drake torched DJ Khaled on Iceman. Drake ate Khaled alive over the exact same behavior, the exact same fence-sitting, the exact same industry 2 timing. But Khaled has no leverage. Khaled cannot deliver a Future hook. So Khaled gets the bullets and Future gets the passes. That is the double standard the whole rap world just watched Drake perform in real time. Here's the twist inside the twist, ran back to Atlanta, that Drake-Future collab on Iceman, has already fallen off the charts. It fell off before Janice STFU. It fell off before STFU. It fell off before the entire back half of the album. So Drake didn't even get the chart insurance he sold his soul for. He put his enemy's best friend on his album, he ate the public criticism for it, he swallowed the disloyalty at the World Cup, and the song didn't even hold. That is a triple loss. That is not the ledger of a winning artist. That is the ledger of a man who traded principles for streams and got neither back. Now, watch what happens when the camera pans away from Drake's section. Jay-Z is in there running the room like a mayor. Beyoncé is glowing. Pharrell is bouncing around like the elder statesman of black excellence. Rihanna and Rocky are wrapped up like the coolest couple on earth. Future is inside that circle laughing. Even LeBron-adjacent basketball royalty was pulled into that gravity. And then the camera cuts back to Drake, and the crown prince of rap is sitting with a girl who went viral on TikTok, a guard who barely plays defense, and the world's biggest YouTube millionaire. That is not a downgrade. That is a full-blown industry demotion caught on 4K broadcast. Now the online commentators are already trying to spin it. Some of them are running with the "Drake got blackballed" narrative. But drop your verdict below, because here is where I want your honest take. Is it really a blackball if Drake is the one who lit the match? Because when I go back to the tape, when I go back to the actual Iceman tracklist, Drake was the aggressor. Drake threw the first shot at Jay-Z, Drake threw the first shot at Rocky. Drake threw the first shot at Pharrell. Drake threw the first shot at Kendrick. He set the whole industry on fire, and now that the fire caught him standing alone in a stadium, we're supposed to feel bad? No. That's not a blackball. That's called consequences. And Drake, of all people, should know the difference, because Drake used to be the one on Jay's arm at events like this. Drake used to be the one Pharrell called for verses. Drake used to be the golden child of the room he just got frozen out of. Here's the thing the internet doesn't want to say out loud, Drake didn't get quiet at the World Cup because he chose peace. Drake got quiet because there was nobody in that stadium willing to give him the cosign to be loud. You cannot flex when your entire peer group looks through you. You cannot chirp when there's no chirp coming back. Drake's whole persona is built on being the guy the room revolves around. Sunday night, the room revolved around Jay-Z, around Pharrell, around Rihanna, around Rocky, and Drake was reduced to the corner booth at his own party. That's not swagger. That's survival. And listen, you want to know how bad the optics really got? The commentators watching the broadcast started clocking that Drake wasn't kicking it with a single rapper of consequence. Not one. He was kicking it with soccer players. He was kicking it with sprinters. He was kicking it with basketball players who don't crack a starting five. He was kicking it with viral personalities. The joke going around the industry right now, and I want you to hear this, is that if you're a professional athlete with a bad game record, you qualify to hang with Drake. If you're a rapper who reached the top of the mountain, you don't. That is a devastating read on where Drake sits in the room right now. Let me tell you exactly why this matters for the future of Drake's career. Rap is a pure game. Streams are one metric, but placement is the metric that decides longevity. Who invites you to their album? Who puts you on their tour? Who defends you when the internet turns? Who shows up in your section at the World Cup? Drake used to have all of that. Drake used to have Jay endorsement, Pharrell endorsement, LeBron endorsement, the entire cultural aristocracy backing his catalog. On Sunday night, the world watched every single one of those endorsements evaporate on live television. Numbers don't fix that. Numbers can't buy a photo op back once the room has decided you're radioactive. Now here's where the story doubles back on Future, because we cannot let this slide. Some people are trying to argue that Future was just being neutral, that Future is playing Switzerland, that Future has no dog in this fight. But swing back to the receipts. Future didn't sit in a neutral section. Future didn't sit alone. Future planted himself right inside the Pharrell camp. Pharrell, who has publicly warned everyone opposing Jay-Z, and Drake is the loudest name on that opposition list. So when Future stands in Pharrell's section, Future is not neutral. Future is making a choice, and that choice is louder than any lyric on Iceman. Future picked the room. Future picked the winners. Future picked the survival play. And Drake, sitting in his own corner with Sexy Red and Mr. Beast, got the memo whether he wanted it or not. Here's the part that has the whole city talking. Future reportedly dissed Jay-Z on his own recent album. So how is it that Future can diss Jay-Z on record and still be laughing in Pharrell's section? Simple. Future's disses aren't real. Future's disses are marketing. Future runs the game like a mercenary. Every verse is a business decision. Every collab is a business decision. Every alliance is a business decision. That's why the Future Drake reunion on Iceman was never a real reconciliation, it was just two rich men making one more song for one more check. There was no peace. There was no brotherhood. There was no repaired trust. It was a transaction, and Sunday night at the World Cup, the transaction expired in front of the whole world. Here's your click confirmation moment, because this is the exact scene that broke the internet. Cameras roll wide across the industry section, and you can visibly count 15, 20 A-list stars stacked shoulder to shoulder, everyone laughing, everyone glowing, and then the camera pans 4 rows over to Drake's section, and it's Drake, Sexy Red, SGA, Chubbs, and Mr. Beast. 5 people. 5. In the room of the year. That single camera cut is now going to live rent-free on every rap podcast for the next 6 months, and Drake knows it. He has to know it. Because Drake is a student of imagery. Drake built his career on curating his own room. And on Sunday night, the room curated him. Now let me put you onto something the mainstream press won't touch, because if you rewind the security footage, if you actually look at the body language between Drake and Chubbs across the whole broadcast, even Chubbs looked uncomfortable. Chubbs, the ride or die, the shadow, the man who never leaves Drake's side, spent half the game glued to his phone. When your own OG security consigliere is scrolling Instagram at the biggest event on earth instead of vibing with his boss, that is not the energy of a camp riding high. That is the energy of a camp performing a shift. That is the energy of a room quietly counting down the minutes until they can leave the stadium and disappear into the tunnel. Drake had to see that. Drake had to feel that. And Drake had to sit with the fact that even his inner circle was going through the motions. Now let's talk about the woman in that section, because Sexy Red being the highest wattage vocalist in Drake's row is a story in itself. No disrespect to Sexy Red is a star, Sexy Red is a whole moment, but there is a symbolic weight to Drake's peer bracket collapsing from Jay-Z level company down to Sexy Red level company inside a single album cycle. That is not a lateral move. That is a vertical drop. And that vertical drop happened in the exact same 12 months where Drake was telling the world on Iceman that he was untouchable. Watch the tape. Study the seeding. Read the receipts. The story tells itself. And here's a receipt that nobody has fully connected yet. Pharrell, weeks before the World Cup, went to the Jay-Z concert and posted clips warning anybody moving against Jay. At the time, everybody assumed that warning had a specific address. Now, sitting at the World Cup with Future in his arms and Drake in the far corner, that warning looks less like a general statement and more like a public delivery notice. Pharrell wasn't posting subliminals. Pharrell was posting the seeding chart of the next major industry event before it happened. And Drake either did not see it coming or convinced himself the room would soften once he arrived. Neither one is a great look. Now let's talk about what Drake does next, because this is where the strategy gets interesting. Drake has 3 options and none of them are good. Option 1, Drake doubles down, drops another Iceman tier attack album, and tries to burn the industry down harder. That risks isolating him even further and possibly triggering a coordinated response that ends with Drake truly losing radio and playlist real estate. Option 2, Drake goes quiet, ghosts the discourse, and tries to reset his image through soft rollouts, R&B singles, and pop crossover moves. That's the Drake we saw pre-Kendrick beef, and it might work if the fanbase forgives fast. Option 3, Drake attempts a peace tour. Reaches out privately. Tries to patch things up with Jay, with Rocky, with Pharrell, one by one. That's the play that requires the most humility, and Drake has never been known for humility. Here's the wild card, Drake could also lean into it. Drake could publicly own the isolation, make an entire record about being the villain the industry rejects, and turn the loneliness into a merch line. That's actually the play that fits Drake's brand best, because Drake has always sold vulnerability and paranoia better than triumph. If Drake goes into the studio right now and cuts an album about the night he stood alone at the World Cup, that album could actually go diamond. But the catch is Drake has to be willing to name the moment. And Drake has never been comfortable naming the moment when the moment made him look small. Look, at the end of the day, the World Cup final gave us the clearest X-ray of Drake standing in the game that we've had in a decade. And what the X-ray showed was ugly. It showed a man surrounded by borrowed friends. It showed a man ignored by the peers he once considered brothers. It showed a man whose most loyal collaborator was 3 rows over laughing with his enemy. It showed a man reduced to the corner of a room he used to run. And it showed the whole world that consequences catch up, even to the most streamed artist on earth, even to the man with the biggest playlist share on the platform, even to Drake. Now before you close this out, here's one more thing you need to sit with, because it's the detail that's going to keep you up tonight. Drake spent the entire Iceman rollout telling the world he was untouchable. He said it in bars. He said it in interviews. He said it in the album art. The Iceman persona was built on the idea that Drake had frozen out the competition, that Drake was the last man standing, that nobody could touch him. Sunday Night flipped that whole persona inside out. Sunday Night, Drake wasn't the Iceman. Sunday Night, Drake was the iced-out man, literally frozen out of the room he used to own. And you have to appreciate the irony, because rap is a genre that lives and dies by irony. The man who named the album Iceman just experienced the coldest social freeze of his career in real time, on the biggest stage on earth, in front of every peer whose respect he claims not to need. That is not a coincidence. That is a mirror. And the mirror is telling Drake exactly what the industry has been whispering for months: the throne isn't yours anymore. The throne belongs to whoever the room orbits around. And on Sunday night, that room orbited around everyone but you. And one final chapter you need to hear before we wrap this, because there's a rumor already crawling out of the industry that a certain streaming platform is quietly re-evaluating its Drake front page placement based on how Sunday's optics landed with cultural gatekeepers. Nothing confirmed. Nothing signed. But the whisper is loud. When peer coalitions turn on an artist, platforms follow, because platforms need cultural cover more than they need any single artist's catalog. Drake is at the exact moment in his arc where he still has the numbers but is losing the room, and every artist who reached that intersection historically lost the numbers within 18 months. Kanye lost the room and the numbers followed. R. Kelly lost the room and the numbers followed. DaBaby lost the room and the numbers followed. Drake is not those artists. But Drake is standing at the exact same crossroads, and the World Cup was the traffic light finally turning red. So drop your verdict below and give me the honest take. Was Drake actually blackballed by the industry, or did Drake earn every second of that silence with the way he moved on Iceman? Do you think Future is a snake for standing with Pharrell, or is Future just protecting the bag like anybody else would? And what should Drake do next, the Peace Tour, the Villain album, or the Quiet Reset? Give me your honest read in the comments because I read every single one, and the takes on this story are already the wildest of the summer. If this breakdown made you see the World Cup night differently, hit that like button, hype the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in, because the next chapter of this story is already brewing. Word is Drake is quietly cooking a response, word is Pharrell has more to say, and word is Future is about to drop yet another surprise collab that's going to make this whole thing spiral. When it drops, you know exactly where to be. That's the tea I got for today. Catch you on the next one. Keep it a legend.